I've had tools scattered all over the boat for about 8 weeks now. Pretty much since we went out for Thanksgiving, and it's now late January. Had the alternator rebuilt. It was the rectifier regulator that was bad. So I found a shop locally. It's actually just a guy. And $120 cash. Took him 3 days. Actually took me over a week to go back and get it. And it came with a black paint job, too. I'm going to see if I have a paint pen on board, and I'm going to write the rebuild date and current engine hours on the alternator. Got a new phone charger for 12 volt. It's 2.5 amps per side, or 4.2 max. So anyway, it'll charge the newer phones with that can take a higher amperage than 1 amp. Got to be careful with these things because when they're powered, they put out a bunch of RF interference that interferes with the VHF marine radio. So I only have these plugged in when we're not underway or I'm not monitoring radio traffic. I got my own starter switch recommended by someone here on YouTube, so thank you for the Amazon link. Now I can return the one I borrowed. Spare impeller. When I was going through my engine start issues and I thought it was a solenoid problem, I also ordered the big solenoid that bolts to the starter engine. Got this from some kind of industrial supply house. It wasn't that expensive. I don't remember now what I paid for it, but don't need it, but it's a good spare to carry on board. New terminal end for the line that feeds the house breaker panel. So in my previous video, the eye at the end had split open. So I think I ordered the right size. I believe that's 6 AWG and the stud is definitely 1/4 inch. So to install this, wanted to get one of these for a few years, so finally did it. It's a hydraulic crimper for battery cable, and I've got dies for all the common wire gauges. This is an example of what really frustrates me. Try to take on little projects in manageable chunks that I can tackle in a day or two. This is the supply line from the factory that feeds the house bank to the selector switch in the breaker panel. It's old copper wire. It's not tinned. When I stripped it, it was corroded. Just a little bit of sandpaper, cleaned out the leads, and then I spread them all apart. And yeah, there's corrosion. I assume the whole length of this thing is probably corroded. Maybe it's only a few feet back. I don't know. So the lesson here is I should run a brand new line. This line, it goes below the floorboards down there. I don't know if it disappears in a passageway or if it stays exposed, but I'd happily run a new line, but I want to be able to thoroughly remove the old one. And to do that, I got to start tearing the boat apart. So I'm just going to clean this up the best I can with some sandpaper, mesh it all back together, and crimp on the new connector. Successful crimp. Also heat shrinked all 4 connectors. These 2 are the supply lines off the battery bank, house bank. These 2 continue on to the house breaker panel. Future project, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to clean up all of this by installing a sheet of plywood right here from this stud to, there's another stud behind this sound insulation. There's that one, and there's a second one back there. Those appear to be in line, so I can take a sheet of ply right here, and I am going to install new equipment. I'm going to replace this start bank on-off switch with a new style one. For that sheet of plywood, this is my thinking. Relocate the fuse block that's down there presently. I have a Blue Sea ACR. It's not currently in use, so I'm going to install that. And then a new remote battery switch. And actually, I don't think I'm going to do remote. I'm just going to do a basic Blue Sea, one of those red on-off single bank switches. And then the orange lines are the engine start bank, so that comes into the main disconnect switch and then carries down to a bus bar. The bus bar will feed the ACR, the starter motor, and the windlass. Red lines are the house bank, so the house bank will feed a second bus bar. The AC charger will feed in possibly through a shunt, and the alternator will also feed that shunt. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. And then I have my fuse block that's feeding bilge pumps mostly, and the house, the DC supply for the fridge is on that block right now. Under the sink there's a blower switch. It's not currently in use, so I'm thinking I'll run the DC supply for the refrigerator up to that switch. So I have 2 amp meters at each home station. Those will no longer be functional because I'm not running the alternator up and through those. So I'm going to order 2 voltmeters to replace them. And then this shunt will be to feed, originally I was thinking just a amp meter that I would install at the breaker panel to monitor how many amps are coming off the alternator or the AC charger. So when we're out at anchor and the generator's running, I can conveniently see how many amps are feeding in, and then when we're underway using the main, I'd have the same effect. However, in thinking about this a bit more, and I posted a thread on the Trawler forum looking for advice, thinking this shunt, I'll move up to the house bank and then use a smart battery monitor, so that way I can monitor charge and discharge off the house bank. And then my AC charger line, right now I've got a 3-bank AC charger. One line goes to the genset battery, one to the house, one to the main. I'm going to remove the main supply, so the AC charger will be feeding the house bank. And then the house bank feeds the ACR, so when the charger or alternator are active, the ACR closes and it sends charge current to my start bank as well as the house bank. Just made a new alternator supply cable, crimped on new connectors with heat shrink, 6 AWG, with a 4-foot line, even though I think I only need about 2.5 feet. So I have some extra to trim it down once I get the new sub panel. New soldering iron. Pretty smoky. The tachometer wire needs to be soldered onto a point on the alternator. However, this iron is one temperature and it's way too hot. It was melting the jacket on the cable. So I'm going to bring a better iron from home. I think this is the battery monitor I'm going to order. And reading the instructions, the shunt is to be installed on the negative wire, not the positive. So my schematic is incorrect. Ordered 2 inexpensive voltmeters for the dash. Bus bars and cables should arrive in about a week. That's it for now. Thanks for watching and hope to continue the next step next week.